G'day and welcome to the Off-Chain Podcast. Don here with you. Our guest today is Yannik Schrade, CEO and co-founder of Arcium. It's a confidential parallel computing network bringing fast, scalable and universal encryption on-chain. As lead architect and visionary behind Arcium, Yannik created this DPIN by leveraging his expertise in cryptography with the goal of advancing data security and privacy. So we're really excited to have Yannik on the show today to talk about parallel computing. If you don't know what it is, we're going to cover it and why it matters to you and how it furthers the quest for privacy on-chain. Let's dive in. How about we start with your origin story? How did you get started in Web3?
So I personally got started in Web3 at a quite late stage, I would say. So my co-founders have been in Web3 for many more years than I have. I personally got really into Web3 due to my interest in cryptography and its applications. And so what got me into Web3 was actually wanting to build privacy-preserving technology, because just by working with cryptography at university and getting into blockchain, reading books about distributed systems, I just realized that modern cryptography and distributed systems paired together can lead to some very interesting architectures with new kind of applications that can be built, especially on the privacy preserving front.
Where did your interest in cryptography come from initially?
Excellent question. So I've started programming when I was 12 years old. So I've always, for some reason, had this intrinsic interest of building things, I think, and programming was this way of very quickly being able to build new systems. So I did that as a kid. However, decided to first go study law after high school. And during studying law, then I came back to this passion of programming. And in that phase, developed an app which became quite successful, I would say. And so that then led me to, instead of further pursuing studying law, instead pursue studying mathematics and computer science.
Wow.
And I really got into cryptography during university.
All right, man, that's quite a path to do what you're doing now. How did the idea, what are you building now, I should say? What are you building now? Like what's it all led to?
Yeah, so with Arcium, we're building a global supercomputer for the hyper-encrypted internet. What that means is that we're building technology that allows for confidential computing. Trustless confidential computing. So it becomes possible to run computations over encrypted data without ever having to see that encrypted data. So it becomes possible to build confidential applications on top of blockchains. It becomes possible to run confidential AI applications within Arcium to have highly sensitive, isolated data and collaboratively train some AI model on that data without having to expose it. So all of these kinds of applications is what we're aiming to allow other people to build with our network. So we're really in the trenches building the cryptography for all of that to happen.
So is it the cryptography that enables Arcium to really work well, or is it blockchain that enables it to work well? Is it the rise of AI that enables it to work well? Is it just genius programmer making it happen that enables it to work well? Or is it just genuinely a combination of all of these kinds of things? How do you come up with the idea for something like this?
So it's the cryptography, it's the genius engineers,
of course,
and it's the connection to blockchains. So the idea really came up. So it's an amazing concept if you think about it. Being able to run computations, any computer program basically, over data without knowing that data, right? To be able to fully, securely process data and maintain confidentiality without exposing that data. So basically, it was me coming across this concept in cryptography, that it's possible to do something like this with secure multi-party computation. And that's then how Arcium evolved into what it's now, this generalized confidential computing network. Beforehand, we were mostly focusing on using different cryptography to provide privacy, but it evolved over time into what it is now. And we are able to facilitate that for numerous reasons. One reason is the cryptography and also its exponential acceleration, I would say, in research and performance gains and increases in efficiency over the last years. And then it's due to things like, for example, we've recently acquired our largest Web 2 competitor and took over team members from their team and their technology. And they, for example, have been a leader in confidential AI. We've been building over the last few years a protocol for more confidential on-chain applications. They've been building something specifically for confidential AI. I would say that's something that would have taken us many more years to accomplish, but they've spent the last 8 years to build that out. And so those two things are now coming together. So it's both a question of research, but then it's also a question of engineering. It's actually a question of building those systems, optimizing those systems, not just formulating some mathematical cryptographic schemes on paper, but also actually building very efficient implementations of that. And then blockchain comes into play as well, which is a significant part in our architecture due to the fact that basically, without getting too technical, there's a trust assumption in blockchains, right? Honest majority, usually, with practical Byzantine fault tolerance, for example, it would be 67% of validators that find consensus being honest. So that's a trust assumption in a distributed setting. For us, there's also sort of a trust assumption for confidentiality. So it's not a trust assumption for correct execution of some computation, but rather it's confidentiality, right? I want my data to be remain confidential when I get it processed by Arcium, right? So I need to know the trust assumption. The trust assumption in our case, however, is the ideal trust assumption. It's the so-called dishonest majority trust assumption, which means there's 1 out of n being the size of the network, for example. 1 of the total size has to be honest, which is something incredibly nice. At the same time, this very nice trust assumption that on a cryptographic level we have, in the past really lacked its ability to be implemented in a practical way because it's very limited. If you think about this trust assumption then leading to a high risk of censorship or DDoS attacks. And so by combining this kind of cryptography with blockchain-based staking and slashing mechanisms, we are able to overcome those practical limitations of those cryptographic papers. So that's why this connection between blockchain and MPC, secure multi-party computation, is so powerful, because it's this logical connection that allows for the trustless processing, because we can implement some game theoretical mechanisms that overcome some of the remaining limitations of the research papers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so as you're talking, I'm thinking obviously there are a lot of business applications and commercial applications, but even something like, for example, I think about my phone or apps that I use, and I think about the various levels of data that are going all around the world based on different apps that I use and what's happening with that data. And some of that data obviously is very special to me, and I don't want that data to be known or shared by anybody. Some of it I'll be very happy for people to use if it's going to be helpful, and yet I'd still like them to be able to use it in a way that doesn't lead back to me in any kind of way. What kinds of applications are you primarily thinking about with Arcium, or maybe first? What are some of the first kind of ways that you're thinking about using it? And then maybe I'd love to hear about some of those kind of out of the box ways that this might be implemented that could really revolutionize particular verticals or industries.
So, yeah, I think as you said, one of the big things really is, I think most applications can have increased privacy, right? There's benefits to adding privacy to existing applications. I personally feel like that's something important, but at the same time, sort of boring as well. I just want app X now with privacy, right? I feel like that's cool and all, but I mostly care about exciting new use cases, right? So I think, especially in the DeFi world, what's incredibly exciting is that TradFi has, I think in the US, 30 to 40% of daily US spot volume is in dark pools. So that's something that's not possible on the blockchain as of right now, because everything happens out there in the public. And yeah, in order to be able to have dark pools on the blockchain, you need confidential computing and efficient confidential computing, more precisely, right? And so I think that's a very exciting use case, because it also serves as a sort of optimization and benchmarking use case, because performance and order book size and efficiency of the matching algorithm is so important. So I think that's an interesting use case, and a use case that in DeFi makes a lot of sense to begin with. I think in the distributed setting, it's surprising what kind of applications actually can make use of something like this. Because if you think about it, what people are able to do when they use Arcium is they can basically get rid of most sort of trusted server infrastructure. And it's not just about having to trust some server to execute some logic. It's also about having to maintain that server, right? And I think that's why the ability to have some confidential, autonomous execution without requiring you to maintain some server and maintain the credentials for that becomes very powerful for various kind of applications. And there's actually a surprising amount of applications also in the DePIN space that require the use of some proprietary functionality, but still this proprietary functionality should be applied in a trustless way. And so that's, I think, an intersection that can be interesting. Now, what I'm personally quite excited about is artificial intelligence as well. I feel like, especially in the AI field, confidential computing can be immensely powerful and also immensely important. I think, as you described, there's a lot of data all of us would actually love to supply to some functionality to build the greatest models to allow us to overcome a lot of diseases or have earlier risk detection, right? The problem just being that it's impossible as of now to share the data. And I feel like way more data can be collected, way more data can be used, way more powerful models can be trained. And I think part of the answer to that is actually also an intersection with blockchain directly on this data front. I feel like if you imagine your data being fully encrypted and you now being able to share that data, but you actually don't share the data, right? You just share this encrypted data, which I do as well, and everybody else does. And then there's a model trained on top of that data without exposing any single bit of information from any of us. Now we can even have this resulting AI model be fully encrypted and then stored on the blockchain. And now if some doctor, for example, wants to make a prediction, what they're doing is they send a request, again with encrypted confidential data, into that model, run some inference. They never see the model weights. Nobody ever sees the data they use. Nobody ever sees the training data. But with blockchain now in between, there can be a new economical incentive model to provide this data. And that can be sort of a feedback loop that increases the quality of the data, increasing the model quality. And I think that can be very powerful. We published a research paper a few weeks ago about explainable privacy-preserving AI, where basically you have this privacy-preserving model, for example, but you're still able to then gain different kinds of insights, how different parameters played different roles in the resulting prediction that came from this request. So I think AI is definitely something very interesting, both in the distributed but also just traditional enterprise setting. I think that's really a place where there can also be applications like we've been approached by organizations wanting to do some optimizations basically between logistic providers. They don't want to give each other the data, but if they can do this confidential computation where they can just say, okay, we want to find out some intersections, some delivery route frictions, whatever, they can optimize without having to trust each other and can achieve win-win situations.
Current technology that so currently you can do the thing that you're talking about now, so they're like a roadmap or working on.
Yes. So So that's actually been possible for years. It's so Arcium right now, we're in private testnet. In general, the kind of technology that we're building with secure multi-party computation, MPC, allows for that. What MPC allows for is a set of parties to jointly compute some function over distributed data without having to share that data. And so how it works, basically how you can imagine it is you have some secret and I have some secret, and each of us generates two random numbers, and your two random numbers added together form the secret. My two random numbers added together also form my secret. And then you share one random number with me, I share one random number with you, and then we are able to run computations with those so-called secret shares that we have. And at the end, the resulting secret shares we add back together, and then we get the final output. And so if I have some data, I can create those random numbers and just send them to a network of nodes, where each node then holds one piece of data. And the trust assumption that you have is that not all of those nodes are controlled by some malicious entity. There's at least one node that's not controlled by a malicious entity. So that's basically how it functions. It involves a lot of secret sharing and doing communication between the participants, and at the end of the day, then reconstructing the final output.
Yeah, so ultimately they're trying to get to actionable intelligence or some sort of prediction, right? And they can do it in a way where they're not sharing proprietary data or secrets. Well, they are. So they're utilizing it but not exposing it. That's the go. That's the case.
So I mean, it's you could say that secret sharing. I mean, share in that sense really is just a a chunk, a puzzle piece, right? So I'm just giving you a single puzzle piece, but that puzzle piece is a special kind of puzzle piece because it doesn't give you any information about the big picture, and that's important. It's a fully random puzzle piece. It's not even. Yeah, puzzle piece is actually a very bad analogy because a puzzle piece would information, right? But the kind of puzzle pieces we operate in are really fully random. So the funny thing really is, and that's why this technology is also so interesting. Now, if you imagine a secret share as a puzzle piece, imagine having a big puzzle, and you have all puzzle pieces, but not one puzzle piece is missing. So 1,000 puzzle pieces required, you have 999. You would not be able to identify what the picture is with MPC. With normal puzzles, you would be able, but with the kind of puzzle pieces we operate in, you need all of them. Otherwise, you have no clue what the picture is that the puzzle represents.
Yeah, gotcha. So you can reward people who are providing data, and you can reward people who are running the nodes, and people who want to create actionable predictions or intelligence with the data will pay for that data.
Exactly. Yeah, and the way we're designing Arcium really is as and that's also one of the problems why privacy preserving technology has found not too impressive often adoption, I would say. It's because the complexity of adding it. I think we've seen that especially in the blockchain setting with CK projects mainly, and we've also been doing a lot of CK in the past, giving the burden to the developer that now should add privacy to the applications, and then telling them, just learn about cryptography and zero knowledge proofs, right? That's basically what they're telling them, and implement this kind of logic, right? So I think that doesn't make any sense. The way I think about it really is it should be as accessible as possible, and that means whoever uses it shouldn't have to understand the technology. They should just understand what it entails as an end that can be achieved with it, and then they can build apps with it. So that's also one of the reasons why research is the one thing, but engineering is an aspect that is also highly important, because at the end of the day, that the research can be as perfect as you want, but if it doesn't bring some application, if you will, that someone can use, it's of no value.
So Yannik, you mentioned DeFi as one of the applications before. Who else should be excited about this?
Everyone. So I think everyone should actually be excited about this, because if and I'm referring back to this acquisition because I think it's a good example, because that team Infer, they've been around for 8 years, and they've used this exact technology that we are using. The big difference between the two of us really was Arcium is doing decentralized confidential computing, Infer is doing confidential computing, right? So that's a different strategy about, do we create patents for the technology? Do we license it out, right? So that's what they've been doing, but they've been doing that with defense organizations, let's call it that, healthcare and finance, traditional finance teams. So there has been an incredible need in those sectors for this kind of technology. So that's the governmental sector, that's organizations, right? That's enterprises. On the DeFi front, it's DeFi protocols, and I think in the blockchain ecosystem, we more easily realize also the individual. So it's also the individual that greatly benefits from this kind of technology being implemented in apps, right? To protect their privacy. Yeah, if we think of stablecoin adoption, right? I don't think that there will be a substantial adoption of stablecoins as payment rails if there's no confidentiality. If every transaction, either the individual or big institutionals, right, perform are fully public. So that's what I feel like everyone should be excited about. The individual that wants to revolutionize the world through blockchain, but at the same time, the government as well.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned health before. So I'm just, again, just thinking as you're speaking. So there's a group of research team A over here, they've developed some IP, but nothing that's really led to anything. And then research team B over there, and they've also done some research, but nothing that's really, led to anything. And then research team all the way through to Z. And they could potentially, with Arcium, come together without exposing any of their proprietary, like intellectual property or research, but still come up with solutions based on, like, if there's any intersecting solutions amongst their research. That's one of those kind of applications.
Exactly.
Sounds
that
amazing.
would be fully possible. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible technology, right? And yeah.
Because
I think
it strikes me, and I'm not trying to claim any kind of expertise in health at all, but it strikes me in academia generally and research specifically that holding on to or siloing your knowledge away from somebody else's knowledge is actually something that is key to some people's survival in terms of commercialization, or we're not ready to do anything with this particular piece of research yet, but maybe sometime in the future, or we might never want to do anything with it, but we're not going to let anybody else use it because for whatever reason. But if there's a way to incentivize people to monetize that in a way that they wouldn't otherwise, and then lead to potentially, life-saving or changing technologies, that sounds phenomenal. To incentivize or align incentives in a way that they're not right now.
Exactly. Yeah, I think so too. And it removes more friction, and I think enables better coordination amongst different groups of humans, I think. Yeah.
So would you call this? It's not DeFi infrastructure. It's a deep in. Would you call it? Is it something different? Is it a new thing?
It's DeCC actually. That's a term we came up with. Decentralized Confidential Computing. Because there's different approaches to pursuing that. There's teams that use other kinds of technologies. In my opinion, unsuited, inferior technologies. My fully unbiased opinion, but I think I think MPC actually is the best suited technology for what we're trying to achieve, because we want it to be trustless. We don't want to have to trust some specific hardware manufacturer to provide some hardware that claims to provide privacy. And at the same time, we want to be highly efficient and want to be able to run any kind of computation. And that's what MPC allows for. So I think it makes most sense to think about it as its dedicated category, and not even think about it as privacy, because it's about privacy for compute, right? It's not about just making financial transactions or whatever private. It's about compute. Things like that can be built with confidential compute, but it's really and that's why I really like this messaging that we're using with calling Arcium a global supercomputer. I think that's the way you should think about it. It's this layer, I think really foundational layer for the future of the internet, that just comes with confidentiality and encryption, and anyone can access that. And blockchain networks sort of serve as I/O devices to that supercomputer. But you can also plug in off-chain data and any kind of data source. It doesn't have to be on the blockchain. But for blockchain networks, Arcium then becomes an asynchronous execution engine that allows the processing of confidential operations that you would want to have within a smart contract. Yeah.
How do you convince, say, people working in defense or government that it is in fact secure and and they might be sharing something with someone who, if they wanted to create some data or find out something by not sharing but putting forth some encryption or encrypted data alongside a competitor, for example, how are you convincing them that in fact that won't be exposed?
Mathematics, I would say.
Okay.
And proof.
You show them the.
Yeah. So I think that's one part of it. Showing that kind of logical formal proof. But then I think at the same time you can't underestimate in all of those cases for decision-making processes also the human element of having a team with strong track record in research, in implementing these kind of systems and going through with them. So I think those are important aspects. What's interesting, what we've seen actually in those areas is those kind of entities actually explicitly looking for this kind of highly secure technology and stating, hey, we explicitly need encryption schemes that you secure multi-party computation.
Yeah. Okay, so they're coming to you.
Yes, so I think for highly sensitive data applications, it's relatively easy convincing some other party of the security of that kind of technology. I mean, there's more difficult parts to, I don't know, if someone would be trying to achieve some contracts with these kind of entities, I feel like, but convincing people who have highly sensitive data of the security of those systems, I think is actually quite straightforward. I feel like the more difficult question would actually be, okay, what about then using these kind of systems for less sensitive data, right? Do we then still need those kind of cryptographic systems, or can we rely on, right? So I feel like that's actually the bigger challenge, trying to convince these kind of people that don't have as sensitive data that needs as much protection.
Yeah, gotcha. You mentioned acquiring your biggest Web 2 competitor. We've got a lot of founders and investors who watch the show, listen to the show. Can you share about that M&A process of actually somebody who is a competitor? Did you have existing relationships with them, or did you just see that they were eating up market share, or did you think, these guys are doing really, really good work, we can make it better, we should be doing things together? Can you help us understand that process?
Yeah, so we've known them since the beginning, I would say. So since the beginning, where we actually sort of with Arcium pivoted to generalized confidential computing, and we always thought of them as being this team that had amazing technology, but was sort of isolated because they were just addressing the traditional customer sector and were not interested in anything blockchain related. So that's why we existed in different spheres. And I feel like the interesting aspect of it really is it's those different spheres coming together to form one thing. And I feel like really Web3 is the more logical source of confidential computing, building it as a sort of open confidential computing layer and allowing it to be used both for on-chain and off-chain apps. The M&A process, I can't share too much detail,
for sure.
but I would say the following. So the most important aspect for me really has always been the team from their company, I would say after the first call I had with those engineers that we took over into Arcium and researchers, I knew that they would definitely have to join Arcium, right? So it just felt definitely felt right on that level. So I didn't have to even look at their source code. It was enough to have spoken with the researchers and engineers to be certain that there's this just logical connection of a shared vision that is bigger than what they tried to achieve before.
Yeah, and obviously having such in computing terms at least, a long-standing company who had runs, those runs on the board, and now folding that into or combining that with that Web3 expertise. I note that you spoke at the World Economic Forum as well. Do you think that the people who are entrenched in the TradFi realm are ready to go in on chain settlements? And are you well placed? I mean, obviously you spoke there. I'm just wondering if that Web 2 and Web 3 combined, do you think that provides a little bit more legitimacy, or is there more trust there? Or we should start with how was it even speaking at the World Economic Forum?
So I think one of the interesting aspects is I had a panel discussion there with folks from the it was one person from the Bank for International Settlements and some woman from Washington DC. But the discussion was about financial privacy actually, and building those different positions as you can imagine. But surprisingly, I think the Bank for International Settlements, for example, had this project. I actually don't know the current stage of that project, how it was evolving over this year, I guess. But Project Tourbillon, I think it was called, and that project was about giving actually cryptographic privacy to citizens when they do transactions with CBDCs, right? Which is something you wouldn't expect to be hearing at the World Economic Forum from the Bank for International Settlements, right? Which
sure.
Sort of interesting that's something that's on their agenda. So that was quite surprising for me. At the same time, that was really the time where we then started to decide to pivot fully towards confidential computing, to allow for generalized computer programs, right, to be fully encrypted and run on encrypted data, instead of just doing encrypted financial transactions on the blockchain. And I mean, I feel like players in the traditional world, I think there's financial TradFi players that are actually already using private ledgers within their clearing houses to settle transactions, and they're not able to use public ledgers because they require confidentiality. So I think that's actually a surprisingly important aspect to those kinds of players when you talk with them. So that's one of the aspects that they require. I think, as you said, this sort of track record of being in both worlds can help us with that, with onboarding those players. But in general, I feel like they're gonna be one of the first players who actually will commit to this new kind of infrastructure, I guess, because the smart players will realize that it's sort of inevitable, right? I'm wondering about the long-term plays then, because I don't know, you can have credit card issuers, accept some crypto infrastructure load, but at that point I'm wondering, why is there credit cards in the first place, right? So I feel like there's a lot of those entities, those players that will be replaced by a new financial system. At the same time, I feel like there's players that either will be completely new players, or some legacy players will be able to also run on those new rails. That will make logical sense, because I feel like it might, at the end of the day, not actually be every human on Earth having a ledger and some cold storage and some hot wallet. I feel like that's maybe something that not every human will be doing in day-to-day life. So there might be some need for entities still. I think the
CBDCs factor in there at all?
CBDCs, I feel like, we had the election yesterday, right? So I don't know if Trump holds true with his promises, but I feel like CBDCs, I feel like last year there was so much talk about CBDCs, and that has greatly decreased over the last few months. I feel like nobody talks about them anymore. So I don't know for what reason that's the case, but at least perception-wise, CBDCs aren't on top of everyone's minds right now. So I think CBDCs actually will rather be stablecoins. I feel like we'll see way more adoption on the stablecoin front, and that will have. Looking at the Bridge acquisition, I feel like that's such a incredible signal that just signals that stablecoins, I feel like, especially, of course, confidential stablecoins, will allow for improved adoption. I don't know how a CBDC. Reach-wise, right? So if you have a US dollar CBDC, US citizens can maybe use that, right? But I feel like the value of the US dollar as a stable currency, for example, can be way more global. So I feel like it's logical to also as currency issuers to prefer stablecoins. I feel like in order to increase the power, I guess, they have as centralized players, which is something that we might not like, but at the same time, I feel like having those currencies run on this kind of distributed financial infrastructure is a first win that can lead to improved systems down the line.
Yeah, man. That seems reasonable to me. Especially if there's a private transaction layer where you can. I don't know why everyone wouldn't use that if it was available though. That's the
exactly 100%. And there's we're working with the with folks at Solana, because they have a confidential extension. It's called PayPal. Is set to be using that with PayPal USD, which allows for confidentiality for just sending money from A to B with zero knowledge proofs. and we're basically building an extension to that. So you can also send it to a smart contract instead of just sending it from a wallet to another wallet, but you can send it to a smart contract, and that smart contract can then be used to do whatever with those confidential funds. So I feel like that's an important aspect that will just require in order to find this adoption.
Yeah. What else is, or I should say, what are you most excited about, say, for the last few weeks of this year and coming into 2025 for Arcium? What's the next big thing for you guys?
So I think I'm very excited about just onboarding developers into the private testnet. As most engineering problems, it sort of takes longer than expected sometimes. So actually being able to allow more people to use our technology and start building new apps on top of Arcium and adding confidentiality to existing apps. I think that's what I'm most excited about, to be able to do that this year and then prepare the mainnet launch for next year. Yeah,
that's cool. What about in the Web3 sphere generally, and then maybe just the market generally? What are you looking forward to, or maybe what do you expect to see over the coming months?
So I'm less of a market expert, I would say. I'm more of a infrastructure expert.
Sure.
And so what I expect to see over the next few months, and that of course goes hand in hand with us going into mainnet, but over the next months and years, I expect a lot of applications to be using confidentiality and be able to provide entirely new use cases to users, and through this drive adoption. At the same time, I think we will actually be able to bring adoption ourselves of blockchain systems without requiring those to care about blockchains, because, as I said, there's a lot of highly sensitive data actually out there that needs to be processed securely. And so I feel like that's something more mid to long term. We're also, super excited about.
Yeah, that's cool. One last thing I like to ask all the guests to come on the show is, does it have to be about Arcium or even Web3 in general, but do you have any particularly contrarian views, things that you think are important that no one else thinks are important, or things that you think are not important that everyone thinks is important, things that you think will happen that nobody else thinks will happen, and vice versa? Do you have any particular contrarian views?
So I think one of my contrarian views would be, at least on a societal level, because I feel like most people in society think differently about this, is that if we are able to get AGI, artificial generalized intelligence, right, this superhuman intelligence, a lot of jobs will be replaced, but that's not a bad thing. I feel like it's sort of accelerated evolution towards the superhuman, I guess. And I feel like that's a good thing. So I think that might be something that most people on the streets wouldn't agree with.
I think you might be right. What leads you to that particular perspective?
I mean, I feel like it doesn't make any logical sense to hold on to things if it's less efficient, right? I mean, I think horse riding is a cool hobby, but at the same time, it's not the ideal means of transport, right? And so, I feel like it has shown, history shows us that that's the case, and we're just on this on this exponential curve right now, where there might be more rapid changes happening and more drastic changes of actually maybe as South Park predicted, maybe all of the jobs that require human brains will go away, and instead the handyman will be the most sought after job. I don't know.
Sure.
I think it doesn't make any sense to restrict the potential to of this kind of technology, especially if it's actual intelligence, right? I feel like there's so much more potential that this technology then can be used for, and yeah, if efficiency in general can be increased, I think shouldn't restrict that.
Do you have any fears or concerns with who might get to AGI first?
So that's also very important, and so privacy is very important in my opinion, and simply because I think without privacy there's no freedom, right? So I think if some central entity gets access to AGI, they would be corrupted by it. I feel like Sam Altman would be one of the first persons to be quite easily corrupted by AGI. So, but anyone having access to that technology will be convinced, okay, I can use this for the best of humanity, right? But it's
Sure.
their concrete interpretation. So it's one single actor that now interprets what the best for humanity is, which might actually not be ideal. And so I feel like what I would want to see is exactly what I described earlier. Having sensitive data, having your phone, right? Your iPhone that uses Apple Intelligence, instead of just giving Apple all of your data, all of your history, right? That data at some point becomes encrypted, becomes confidential, and then that data will sit in encrypted secure storage, will be trained into models, and then at some point will be used for AGI, right? So you will have encrypted data, and now importantly, I feel like encrypted AGI. So there's not just some AGI hard drive that stores all of those model weights. Instead, it's all encrypted, and it exists in a distributed setting. And so now we can use smart contracts and different also confidential functionality with what we're building with Arcium, I guess, to access control this AGI, right? I feel like that's very interesting as a concept. So with end-to-end encrypted AI, I think it can be possible to have safe AGI, because then there's no single centralized entity controlling it, and you can think of this distributed network as being this AI. But I think that's something that we should aim for. We definitely need to aim for responsible AI, and one of the key aspects to leading to responsible AI systems will be introducing confidentiality, and also adding explainability.
Yeah, man, I haven't heard someone explain it like that before, especially with it makes it sound like we need some sort of Satoshi type person or group of people to do the establishing in a benevolent way. And maybe even, I don't know, if you could do it in some sort of decentralized way, I think makes sense the way that you laid it out.
Yeah. And I mean, you can really then think of this superior AI system and just have as this global distributed entity where you have access control rules. Again, the question then is, I mean, if it's AGI and human built access control, I don't know, but I feel like it would at least be a theoretical path to safe super intelligence, which is something worth pursuing, I feel like.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess if someone wants to find you online or learn more about Arcium, where can they find you?
So Arcium is just arcium.com. We have a lot of documentation, a lot of technical docs, and we just came out with an explainer video series explaining the technology and different use cases one can build with Arcium. So yeah, I think arcium.com is the best place to look for. And if you want to, I don't know, get started with cryptography or whatever, you should visit my website. I have some book recommendations there. So yannickschrade.xyz and arcium.com.
Good on you. We'll put those in the show notes. You just reminded me, you said you started coding around 12. I have a 12-year-old who's just recently got into coding.
Nice.
So I might get him to read some of those books that you you recommend.
Yeah. Perfect. There's also some science fiction books there, so he should read that 1984 and Do Robots Dream of Electric Sheep. Yeah, nice one. Good one. And all the best for working towards mainnet launch and onboarding people building on top of Arcium. Really pumped to see you succeed. Good on you. All right, thank you very much, Don. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Off-Chain. We love bringing you great guests like Yannik to inspire you to learn more about Web3, about technology, thinking about the future and how you might be a part of building it. As always, please like, subscribe, or better yet, share this episode with a friend. Help us spread the word and join us again next week for another exciting episode of Off-Chain. Till then, take care.